You're not my dad!
What up, Ho Biscuits? It's your girl Skittin', back at it again. So it's been, I don't know, I guess yesterday was technically the first day of fall. And so all the fucking autumn crazy bitches are out here like, happy first day of fall, happy Mabon, I don't know how to fucking say that word. Happy autumn, oh my god, so ready for sweaters and boots and pumpkin spice, I'm so ready. And I'm just like, bitch, here in Vegas, it is still, the high today is 98, ma'am. What are you talking about? Put your cardigan away. You're gonna give yourself heat stroke. It's always so funny to me to watch like the rest of the country prepare for fall. They're ready. And I'm just like, girl, we still smack dab in the middle of summer here. Like, it's on and popping still. The beach clubs are still open. Bikini contests are still happening. Okay, outdoor dining is like a thing, but only if you feel like sweating. So, but anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized. And if it's fall for you, good for you. I hope the leaves are changing and the birds are chirping and shit. I don't know what the fuck happens in a real fall. I don't fucking know. Is it like getting cooler where you're at? Congratulations. Today we are here to watch a video. This video is from SCP Explained, their story and animation channel, and this one is called SCP-4955 Knife. So I'm pretty excited about this. Lord Bung has still not released his next volume of Confinement, so we're here and we're gonna watch this instead, and we're gonna be happy, we're gonna be grateful. Okay, you feel me? Y'all feel me? Y'all feel me? Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
The SCP Foundation works very hard to keep all the knowledge and evidence of their discoveries from reaching the outside world. As far as the average person is concerned, the entities and anomalies documented by the SCP Foundation do not exist. Anyone that stumbles upon an anomaly without authorization will wind up having their memory wiped with amnestics or something far worse. But either way, the knowledge never enters into the general public's consciousness.
Right.
But what if there was an anomaly that even the members of the Foundation didn't know about?
Okay.
Not because they hadn't discovered it yet, but because somehow it wouldn't let itself be known.
Ooh.
It sounds impossible, but one particular Foundation researcher faced this paradox while covering an anomaly that is currently listed in the archives without a number, referred only as Knife. Junior researcher Harris was assigned to SCP-4955 one day, and given the responsibility of examining it and cataloging any anomalous behavior displayed by the item. SCP-4955 was a simple knife of unknown make and model, about the size and sharpness of a common kitchen knife. He took the knife into the lab and ran the usual tests. He scanned the materials, tested for any kind of radiation, administered thermodynamic tests, and did everything else that is standard procedure for a new SCP. In spite of all of his efforts, he found nothing unusual about it at all. It was just a knife, with a metal blade and a wooden handle. It didn't give off radiation. It didn't have any unusual level of sharpness. It didn't glow in the dark. By all accounts, it was a completely ordinary, boring knife. So why then was it even at the Foundation in the first place? Why was his time, which could be better spent on other more pressing research, being wasted here? Junior researcher Harris decided to present his highly uneventful report to his supervisor. It was then finally that the strangeness began. At the start of the meeting, Harris's supervisor had no memory of anything being placed in P0055, where the knife was being stored. Harris confirmed that yes, there was something there. He continued his report, explaining that the knife had displayed no anomalous properties at all and didn't seem like the sort of thing the Foundation should be wasting resources on. As soon as he delivered his report, his supervisor just stared at him blankly, as if she was expecting something from him. Unsettled, Harris asked her if she was all right. She replied sharply, saying that she was perfectly fine, but was getting tired of waiting for him to give his report. Caught completely off guard, Harris gave her his report on the knife a second time, only to be met with the same blank stare. He attempted to give the report 2 more times before giving up and leaving in exasperation. Somehow, as soon as he told his supervisor about the knife, she
That's
forgot
fucking
everything he
crazy.
said on the
What?
subject. Determined to explore this bizarre turn of events further, Harris set about recruiting a colleague to help him conduct an experiment with the knife. He managed to bribe another Foundation employee named Researcher Smalls with $5 and the appeal of an unsolved mystery, and he agreed to step in.
$5. $5. 5 dinero. 5 pesos. 5? Only $5? Nigga, you gotta slip me at least a 20 to do anything in the SCP Foundation. Anything at all. At least a 20. Honestly, should be a hundo. Like, let's keep it real. $5? Keep your little $5 and I'll keep my life. Okay? That's how I feel. Like, honestly. You should have held out for more money, sir.
As soon as Smalls entered the room where the research was being conducted, Harris held up the knife and showed it to him. He asked Smalls, "Do you see this?" To which Smalls replied bafflingly, "See what?" Harris approached Smalls, holding the knife right up to his face. Still, Smalls insisted that he saw nothing in the room aside from Harris and himself. The more Harris pressed him, the more Smalls insisted with a smile that he did not see the knife and had no idea what Harris was talking about. In a frustrated outburst, Harris smacked Smalls across the face with the broadside of the knife. He stumbled for a moment as the blow made its impact, then steadied himself and looked at Harris with the same expression as before. The same expression he had seen on his supervisor earlier that same day. Attempting to regain his composure, Harris asked Smalls, "Did you feel that?" Smalls grinned at him and replied, "All I feel is bored." Determined to push the limits of his colleague's apparent forgetfulness, Harris cornered Smalls and raised the knife to his face once more. This time slowly, maintaining eye contact with him all the while, Harris used the blade to make a deliberate, shallow cut across Smalls' cheek. The man winced as the knife made its mark, but as soon as the blade was tucked into Harris's pocket and out of sight, he did not reference it once. He smirked at Harris with blood dripping down his cheek from a wound he would not acknowledge. This experiment with Smalls brought Harris's understanding of the knife into sharp perspective. The knife itself was not the anomaly, but rather the knife's effect on anyone who observed it. Everyone, with the inexplicable exception of Harris, who observed or learned about the knife, was rendered somehow unable to verbally acknowledge or possibly even comprehend its existence. Harris and Smalls met for dinner later that evening, and Harris was fascinated to see that his colleague's cheek was still smeared with blood. It had been left to dry there all day, undisturbed on Smalls' face. Several other researchers noticed the wound and asked Smalls about it, who insisted it was nothing. The curious parties accepted his answer, but only after looking at Harris for a long time, though they would not say it out loud. On some level they knew what had happened with the knife. When Smalls wasn't looking, Harris dosed his drink with a strong memory recovery agent developed by the Foundation's anti-memetics team and attempted to introduce Smalls to the knife again. Unfortunately, it had no effect, and Smalls was still unable to acknowledge the existence of the knife. The next day, determined to take his experimentation to the next level, Harris cut his own cheek with the knife. He walked around the facility as usual, letting his wound bleed freely onto his face and formerly pristine white lab coat. Colleagues stopped him to ask what had happened, and he told them plainly, "I cut myself with SCP-4955. Upon hearing those words, each person asking about Harris's injury immediately turned and walked away, covering their mouth. Believing the knife to be some kind of anti-meme, or an anomaly that resists being recorded or remembered, Harris administered further tests. He ran the knife through a QNTM anti-meme machine, but found nothing. The knife behaved like previous anti-memes, but was unaffected by machinery designed to observe them, and was immune to the effects of memory recovery agents designed to counter them."
Wait, so then who assigned him to this assignment then? That doesn't make any sense. Somebody assigned him to this. So how? This is blowing my mind right now.
What then was it? Harris was beginning to feel like he was at the center of a grand practical joke, and he couldn't figure out the punchline. All he knew was that his grip on reality was beginning to slip, and the knife was to blame. Harris's supervisor stopped by his office to check in with him about SCP-4955, demanding a report on the anomaly. At the end of his rope, he responded, "What 4955?" Just as the supervisor began to reprimand him for his poor attitude, Harris took the paperwork for 4955 and shredded it into ribbons with a knife as his supervisor watched. As soon as he was finished, he looked up to see his supervisor staring at him, wide-eyed. Slowly, she lifted her hand to her mouth and began to laugh. She laughed loudly, uproariously, like it was the best joke she had ever heard. Then she asked him to take a look at SCP-3309 instead. Harris clenched his jaw, glared at her, and lifted the knife to his hand. He sliced open the tip of his finger and flicked the blood onto her face. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she turned away laughing, face still streaked with Harris's blood, and went about the rest of her day. This is the moment when Harris began to crack. All he wanted was for someone, anyone, to acknowledge the knife that was driving him out of his mind. It was as if the entire facility, including his own machinery, was gaslighting him. He decided to take more extreme measures to get everybody's attention. At this point, whatever it took, he would do it. Harris marched into the Foundation's cafeteria at lunchtime, carrying his usual bag. He walked into the center of the room, taking in the sight of his colleagues. His supervisor still had his blood on her face. Smalls still had a pool of dried blood on his cheek from his day-old wound. Harris took a deep breath and unzipped his bag, pulling out a test rat from one of the laboratories. As the crowded cafeteria looked on, Harris pulled the knife from his pocket and dispatched the rat with one quick slash.
Why?
He held the dead rat up in the air, commanding the attention of the room, then let it drop with a sickening thud. No one said a word. They only watched and quietly laughed amongst themselves. 5 days later, the rat was still there. It had been stepped on and flattened by days of foot traffic. Flies were beginning to buzz around the corpse, and the smell had seeped into the ceiling and walls. Still, no one mentioned or referenced it. No one moved it, and no one talked about the knife. The following day, unable to stand the smell or the sight of it anymore, Harris broke down and cleaned up the rat. As he did, he could hear people laughing behind him. Every time Harris entered a room, people were laughing about something, and no one would tell him what. Still, when he brought up the knife, even when he screamed and cried and pleaded, everyone ignored the subject. It would not and could not be spoken about. Several days later, Smalls complained that someone had cut the plants he was growing in his room. Even though Harris had not cut his plants, he decided to take credit. "I did it, with my knife," he said. As soon as the knife was mentioned, Smalls sat down and went completely silent, abandoning the subject entirely. This gave Harris another crucial piece of information on the nature of the knife's effects. It did not matter whether the knife was actually present or involved in something. All that mattered was the perception that it was.
Right. Okay.
Even the mention of the knife was enough to invoke its effect. The days bled into each other. Day after day of Harris begging his colleagues to see what he saw, demanding to know what the hell they were laughing about, and feeling more and more utterly alone. Harris's mind had truly begun to come apart at the seams. In the second-to-last entry in his research log, he simply wrote, "It's almost showtime. Time to give the people what they want." The day after he wrote that cryptic entry, Harris walked up to Smalls in the cafeteria and tapped him on the shoulder. When Smalls turned to greet his friend, Harris stabbed him in the chest. Smalls fell to the ground, curling up in the fetal position, and Harris kicked the knife deeper in as Smalls cowered there. He did not stop until Smalls was dead. Harris was removed from the facility, leaving the knife in Smalls' body. Harris was promptly terminated. Eliminating the last person who appeared was able to discuss the knife. As for the knife now, its current location is unknown, making this mundane little object one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the SCP Foundation. What was the knife exactly? What gave it such a strange hold on people? In the end, it might not even matter. After all, what is more frightening? An object that prevents people from being able to remember it, or being the only person in the whole world who does?
That was crazy. That was absolutely insane. That was a complete mind bender. I am not about that life. Nope, I'm done. I'm checking out of this. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations down in the comments below. And other than that, peace out, Ho Biscuits. It's getting lit.